It's professional around here, Fred fellas.
I see that.
You can see this is real. This is the real deal.
I can see it. I saw it.
I knew for a fact that you would show up with that cowboy hat.
Did you?
I did.
Well, that's part of my way of living.
Persona.
Yeah.
It's more than a persona, though. It's really you,
Yeah.
right? The hat.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I've ever seen you without one. Now, I know you don't wear it indoors a lot of times, but I'll take it off as a joke.
No, I don't wear it indoors, and I don't wear it in elevators, and
Yeah.
I don't wear baseball caps either. So
Yeah. You know, when I was in the military, I got so used to you never have a cover on your head when you are indoors. So
Yeah.
immediately I take it off because you get in trouble big time if you did. So anyway, I've got Fred Fellows here on the Art Dealer Diaries. We've been trying to do this for about 3 months, I think, something like that. And he finally made time from his art, his ranching, and all the things that go along with Fred Fellows to come in and talk to me. Now, I'm excited to hear from you, Fred, because there's some stories I don't know about.
well, I'll try to relate them to you as we go along life's weary road here.
Yeah, well, it is sometimes, isn't it?
Now and then.
Yeah, you've had your fair share of ups and downs in the last 10 years. And I don't mean that from an artistic standpoint. You just keep plugging away, but you've had a couple close calls of your own, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk about those maybe if you'll let me. So tell me, you grew up, you started your life in Oklahoma, right?
Yeah, I was born in Ponca City, Oklahoma, which is in northern Oklahoma. It's on the
Yeah, I even know where that is.
right by the Osage Indian Reservation.
Uh-huh.
And my granddad was a civil industrial engineer, and of course, that was the home base and the main refinery for Continental Oil, which was Conoco.
Yeah.
And the governor and Lou Wentz, the governor of the state of Oklahoma, lived there actually.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the home of Bryant Baker's Pioneer Woman statue, which is probably one of the best statues in the country.
And when did that go in?
I'm not sure, in the 1920s or 30s.
So you remember it as a kid, seeing it?
Well, I remember standing down below looking up at it and just wondering, I couldn't believe somebody actually did that, and it was just beyond, when you're a 9-year-old kid, but it impressed me quite a little bit,
Is that the first piece you think that you mentally made it?
Really was. But my grandparents had a few paintings in their home.
Mm-hmm.
And my aunt, I had a kind of a crazy aunt by the name of Violet, and she studied, she went to Lynchburg, Kansas, to that college over there, and studied under Burgess and Zane. Mm-hmm. And then they would pack up and go to Taos in the summertime and work with Nikolai Fashion over there.
So it was like 40s time frame? Or even
Yes, right before the Second World War, pretty much, yeah. And so anyway, I grew up, and I know my granddad took me over to Wool Rock and Bartlesville. And
for those who don't know Wool Rock, that's a great museum. It's in the middle of nowhere.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And also at Wool Rock, they have when they were getting ready to do the Pioneer Woman statue, they had all the top artists in the United States did a maquette, which was about 2 feet tall. And they cast them in bronze, and they sent them all around the state, and let the people in the state vote on which one they wanted. And the Pioneer Woman by Bryant Baker was the one that won out, and that's the statue that's there, and it's incredible. Yeah.
Do you know any of the other artists that would have?
All the great artists that were
there.
They
had like W.R. Lee. I know he had stuff at Willow Rock, a lot in Willow Rock, right? I don't know if he ever.
Yes, he is. Yes, he's got a lot of them, and that's one of the only museums where every painting in the museum is framed with the same frame.
And why is that?
I don't know. It's just something that Frank Phillips wanted. Frank Phillips liked it, and he wanted it, and so he built a museum. So
I know they had a first phase cheese blanket up on the walls with staples in it at one point in time.
Yeah.
And it was always, I found that shocking but amazing at the same time. So you grow up in Oklahoma.
I was born in Oklahoma, in Ponca City, and grew up there to about the 9th grade. My folks got divorced. My dad went into the Navy as a full-time career naval man.
Uh-huh.
Ended up being an aide to Admiral Nimitz in Honolulu during the war.
Wow. And is that how you got your connection to Hawaii? Because you do
No,
have that
no,
connection.
no, no.
I
We'll
know.
get to that a little bit
That's why
later.
I wore
but
this shirt, by the
but
way. It wasn't even
I know it.
on.
I love that shirt. Yeah, it's a little bit wilder than most of mine. But
Yeah.
anyway, my parents, my mother remarried, and my stepdad, and we moved to California with a '37 Ford sedan with a mattress tied on top and a tub on the back, and it looked like grapes of wrath.
And what year would that have been?
That would have been right after World War II, and it was I would guess about 1947, right in there.
So not that far after grapes.
No.
Grapes are out. That really, I mean, that whole exodus was like in the early 30s to mid
Well,
late
it was
30s.
well, a lot of people was a land of milk and honey, and California sounded great, and so at any rate we moved there, and
Where did you guys end up?
we ended up the first place we lived was in went right down by the beach, at a little town by the beach, and then ended up in Linwood, California, which was that's where I went to grade school, and where I ended up in high school after school, and then after I got out of high school, I worked at a saddle shop and served my apprenticeship as a saddle maker.
And so was that when you worked at that saddle shop, was that just happenstance you found it, or did you go, no, I want to be around cowboy stuff?
I liked the West always, and in Ponca City, and my grandmother's brother rode with Buffalo Bill in the Wild West show, and we've got a postcard from him sent
From Buffalo Bill?
from
your uncle?
from my uncle, with a picture of him with his chaps and everything on at Earl's Court in London when Buffalo Bill was there, and was shipped to my grandmother, sent to my grandmother, and we still have that. So anyway, but I grew up listening about the West and loving the West, and so it's just born in me, I guess. So at that time, there were still Indians walking around Ponca City with blankets on.
I believe that.
Osage Indians. But at any rate, I got a job at a saddle shop, and I kept working there until I actually learned to make saddles, and it was a Lyle Butler saddlery. It was in Southgate, California. And then Lyle moved the saddle shop to Paramount, California, and I was working there for him.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a man old guy that run a ranch up in the Mojave Desert. He ran the Jameson Ranch, owned by the Monolith Portland Cement Company. And he came in to have some saddles repaired one time, and he said, Freddie, he says, why don't you come up and work for me and Cowboy on this ranch up there? And he said that at that time I was roping steers in rodeos, in team roping.
And how old would you have been? Because you worked at the saddle shop at 16.
About 19.
So you'd been working, now you're making actual saddles by 13.
And 19, 20 right in there. And I was heading the steers for a guy by the name of Tiny Mattis, who was a brand inspector at the Los Angeles Stockyards. And anyway, and then working at the saddle shop. And he said, well, roping steers in a rodeo, in a roping arena and everything is not the same as punching cows on a ranch. And why don't you come up and work for me?
Mm-hmm.
So I asked Lyle Butler, who I was working for there at the saddle shop, I said, what'd you do, Lyle? And he says, if I was you, I'd go up there. It'd be a good experience for you.
Oh, that was a really generous thing for him to do, because he's losing one of his guys that's making saddles, right?
Yeah, repairing them a lot.
Yeah.
So anyway, I loaded my horse in a trailer, and a little one-horse trailer, and my bedroll and everything, and drove up into the Mojave Desert and drove into the road to the ranch in the great big barn, and pulled in. Next to it, nobody was there. And unloaded my horse and fed the horse, put her in the barn, fed her, and cleaned out the trailer and rolled my bed up in the bottom of the trailer there, and slept that night. And the next morning I got up and fed her, and then I see dust on the road coming in, and here comes Smokey Bethel. So he said, well, you made it in okay? And I said, yep. And it was breakfast time, and I said, I don't know where the ranch house is and everything. I said, I just found this barn. He said, well, there isn't any ranch house. And I said, you mean I'm working on a ranch that there's no ranch house? I said, where do you eat or anything? He says, well, there's a restaurant right down on the highway. When you turned in on that road, there's a restaurant there, and a gas station, a restaurant. And he said, it's owned by the Monolith Portland Cement Company, the same people that own this ranch. And he said, you can just go in there and order anything you want and sign your name.
Oh, you love
I
that.
said, you got to be kidding me. You can go in there if you order a hamburger for breakfast and a malt or something like that and just sign your name. He said, that's right. Anytime you want, you just go in there and get anything you want. I said, God, this is a great place to work, you know. So anyway, I started working for him, and
did you order a malt and a hamburger?
I sure did, almost every day. And so I started working for him, and I found out that even though we were moving cattle and branding and doing a lot of stuff, a lot of the work that the cowboy has to do every day horseback is not as romantic as a lot of people think. And a lot of mornings I'd have to saddle up my horse and put a snake on it and a pipe wrench, and a snake is one of those cable deals that plumbers use to clean out pipes and stuff.
Right.
And go up to clean out springs up in the mountain. It's a dry country. It's a high desert. It's by Tehachapi.
Where Dixon used to go, in fact.
Yep. And I would go out, and they would have a spring with a pipe coming out of it, and it would be a couple of crossbars holding up the pipe, and it would drip into a big tank. And if it dripped all the time, then it would fill the tank up. But if those cows would go up there and knock over the deal that hold the pipe up, then the water would just be going into the ground, and pretty soon those cows would just be sucking mud up there and could drop and die, you know. So it's an important job if you're working on a ranch like that. And so that's where I worked. And then
Would you do this by horseback, all by horseback?
Yes, all by horseback, because the only way, there was no ATVs or four-wheel drive deals or stuff like a Polaris Ranger or something then. I mean, boy. I mean, and it's too high up in the mount, up a canyon and stuff to walk, carrying all that stuff, you know. So anyway, one day, Smokey said, there was a telephone call to you down at the restaurant, and you got to go down there, and it was from your stepdad. And I said, geez, okay. So I went down, and my stepdad at that time was working for Northrup Aircraft. And I went down to the restaurant, ordered a hamburger and a malt, and called my stepdad up. My stepdad said, how would you like to go to work at Northrup Aircraft in Hawthorne, California as a commercial artist C? Now there's ABC. You can imagine C's at the bottom. That's doing paste up and speedball lettering on charts and stuff like that. So I said, I don't know. I always liked art, and I had no art education, but I just liked art. So I went back and I asked Smokey, Smokey, what do you think? God, I said, my stepdad offered me a job at Northrup Aircraft as an artist, you know, and what do you think? I hate to leave him, you know, and everything. He says, if I was you, I'd do it. He says, I'll tell you why. You'll never make enough living cowboying on ranches or making saddles in Paramount, California. He says, if I was you, I'd do that. There is no doubt. He said, beside, tomorrow we got about 400 acres of hay bales that we got to get up. He said, I thought to myself, oh my God.
Man, he was really generous.
Yeah.
Tell you to go before the hay bales. I've thrown those things. That's
so I
no
called
fun.
my stepdad back up and told him to tell the vice president of where he worked there at Northrop Aircraft that I'm on my way. And so I rolled my bed and jumped my horse in the trailer. And
did you ever have a real bed, or did you have to sleep in the barn?
No, I slept in the barn on in my bedroll on a cot. He finally had a cot in there. So anyway,
and how long were you cowboying before you left?
About a year and a half.
Yeah, that'll do it.
And got back into Linwood, California, and showed up at Northrop Aircraft in Hawthorne, California, with a 3-piece suit I just bought, and attache case with Playboy magazines in it. So and that was about it. That was how official I
Was that
looked.
your view of what an artist should look like? At
Oh
that point?
man, look, I had to look. You had to wear a tie every day. I mean, it's a business deal. I mean, suddenly this is not an artist.
Yeah, from cowboy to
It's not an artist studio or something like that. But at any rate, I went to work there, and I really liked it, and I just loved it, and it was a great experience for me, and I couldn't wait to get to work every day.
Wow.
And I found out that I hate lines, standing in lines. That's why I could never go on a cruise ship or something, because I stand in line for, your dinner, and then stand in line for your dessert, and stand in line for whatever. And so when it came time to punch out, because there was a time card, you had a card you punched in, punched out there. And you had to go through security because it was a security area. We were working on secret stuff for the Army and the Air Force. And
what year would have this been?
Yeah, it'd be in the 50s, but anyway.
Yeah, it was before Vietnam.
Yeah. And so we would take, and 5 o'clock would come, and everybody would clean, or 4:45 would come, and everybody would clean their desk up and go down and stand in line to punch out.
Right.
I hated to do that. So I just kept working. And I found out I could just keep working and up till 5, then clean my desk up and pull the cover over it and walk on down. Nobody's there, and punch out and go home. Well, every time there was a chance for advancement, my immediate supervisor, who was a vice president, said, "Shit, you're the only one around here that works." I mean, everybody else goes home even before it's time, and you stay here and work and everything. And I said, "Well, I like to do it, and I don't like to stand in lines." So every time there was a promotion, then I was the one that got it. And so pretty soon they said, "How would you like to be?" Jack Smith left, who was the art director there, and he went to Autonetics, which is North American Aviation. He got a good job there. He said, "How would you like to be the art director?" And I said, "Geez, that's great, because you go on salary. You don't have to punch a clock anymore. You're on salary, and you get a special badge that everybody goes, 'Oh man, he's got a green badge with a top secret deal underneath it.'" So, and I went there, and so after I worked there for about 7 years, and I was the art director when I left.
Did that change the way? Because, in other words, as an art director, you had to supervise people.
Yeah.
Did it become less fun because you weren't actually making art as much, or were you still making art?
No, I was the art director over an art group, and they're all good artists, good guys, and plus I did artwork myself. I mean, I just can't pass everything off, and so we were always working on something, and then
Did any of those guys turn out to be artists, like fine artists, or
a guy by the name of Gil Rudolph did, and went, and another, I can't remember the other guy's name, but not that anybody would know who they are, but I know they went on in art.
Mm-hmm.
And but half of the group was artists, and the other half was writers, because everything we were doing, proposals that go back to on fire control systems and things like that, and that's what our whole department wanted to do, was to get work study contracts for some wild thing that some engineer came up with. So we would put together brochures and flip charts and stuff that they would take back to Washington, D.C. to the Pentagon and try to sell it. And if they got a work study program for like $20 million, that's great, because they're getting money just to study something, not to manufacture anything. And so it was a lot of the work that we did was doing that.
Have you ever seen any of those brochures come back up with your artwork on it anywhere?
No, but once in a while. And then we also art department, we were working on a low altitude penetration system. It's a fast moving radar for the Cobra gunships, and so we had. We put together, the wood shop came in and built a cockpit of a gunship, and then all out of plywood, And but then we'd get two seats in, or two ejection seats in, if it was for like a N-156, a fighter, and the real seats in, and they'd set them in there, and then we would design. They would tell us what they had to have for the fire control system, and we would design it and do it in black on white with Leroy sets and everything, and do the whole thing in ink on white vellum, and then send it to the Photoshop, and then they would reverse it so it'd be white on black, and then we could glue it down on the panel, and it'd look exactly like the real thing. So the test pilots would come in. Two test pilots that worked with us would come in. Bob Gorham was one. He was the first guy to eject out of an airplane at over 400 miles an hour over Port Hueneme. He was flying a Spartan plane out of there. But he would come in, they'd come in and sit there, and then they'd say, okay, they'd bring up something like, you're going to, you've acquired an enemy, so you want to put him on the radar. So you'd have to reach and touch it, and he'd say, no, you got it too far forward. That's got to be back here. And so by the time it was all adjusted, then where the test pilots were happy with it and everything, then they could go to manufacture them and put them in there.
So important stuff you're doing.
Really, it was really a fun deal, and so.
And you did that for 7 years, right?
Yeah, but saving money is what I really wanted to do, was to go paint, and I wanted to go move to Taos and paint.
You did, right?
Yeah, eventually, but eventually saved up enough money to do that, and in the process got a divorce. I'd been married and got a divorce, and eventually moved to Taos. And I wanted to quit first of all. I worked for Northrop in a top secret deal, and so I went up one day and I told them, I said, I'd like to tender my resignation.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, why? And I said, well, they said, you're on salary and you're the art director of this department and making good money. And, we work Sundays and all the time. So he says, I want to paint pictures and stuff like that. I said, well, you can't quit, I said, what do you mean I can't quit? He said, well, you have a top secret clearance and you just can't just walk in here and quit. I said, well, yeah, I've seen you guys hand out pink slips 2 days before Christmas firing people, and you say, I can't quit. I said, that's right. And if you do walk off the job and you don't come back, they guaranteed me I'd never work in aerospace again the rest of my life, or anything that had to do with military. So I had to tuck my tail between my legs and walk back, and they eventually got a guy to take my place.
So you had to wait until somebody took your place. And how long did that take?
About 3 or 4 weeks, right in there. So I moved up to, finally left and moved to Taos.
Now, how old were you then, Fred?
I can't remember. So I was in my 20s, but anyway, that's where I met Ned Jacob.
Yeah.
So Ned and I would go out and paint together, and then we'd also go to the post office every day and see if we had any checks in there or money, and then go have coffee and then decide what to do, and ran out of money. So
what was it that said, okay, I'm quitting this good job?
I have the slightest idea. I think about that right now. I'm 84 years old.
Yeah.
I look back and I think, how on earth did I ever think I could do that?
Yeah. I mean, that's a big jump.
And so, anyway, so I ran out of money and had to go back with my tail between my legs back to Los Angeles.
And how long did you stay in Taos?
About a year.
Do you think that was formative, though, for you becoming a painter from then on?
Yeah, I think it was. It was really a great time, and we met Kippy Kaus, Kaus's son, and saw Kaus's studio as it was when he died. I mean, all the pots were there and everything. I thought, my goodness, oh gosh.
And what were you painting? Were you doing mountains?
Just landscapes, kind of,
Not so much cowboy or any of that?
No, nope. That was yet to come. Anyway, moved back to Los Angeles, and Jack Smith, who got the job as an art director at Autonetics, was a dear friend of mine. I come back and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do. He says, why don't you come to work for me and go on the board here at Autonetics? And Autonetics was a outer space undersea division of North American Aviation. And I thought, geez, this is going to be pretty exciting because they were working on some submarine stuff. And they took over one whole floor in the California Federal Bank building in Anaheim for security reasons. They couldn't have security at their main plant, and so this was total secure place. Anything you used, you had document control. You had to check out, and you had to turn it back in, and it was, each document was documented and everything. So anyway, I went to work there for him on the board, and we worked all the time. I worked overnight and overtime and overnight, and saved up $5,000 and moved to actually Hope to start with, Hope, Idaho on Lake Pend Oreilles.
So this was another big change. You quit that job. And
Yeah, went out to paint again, you know.
And how long did you work at that place? For how many years?
Yeah, about a year and a half.
Yeah, so you got your money and you knew you were going.
Yep, they knew it too. And so I went to Hope, Idaho there, and then moved over to, found a cabin to rent on the Bull River in Knoxon, Montana. And then moved there and started to kind of paint around and didn't have any money, so fishing for serious fishing up there.
Food. And why Montana and Idaho? What was it? Why not just
I had a friend that worked for me. He delivered stuff for me at Northrop and Jack Kay, and he was an aspiring artist also, a pretty abstract. We were during that period, you know. And he had a motorcycle, and he delivered artwork for me. And then he moved to Knoxon, Montana, and then he sent me all these glowing letters about how beautiful it was, and he never sent me any pictures of snow or anything like that. But anyway, moved over to Knoxon and lived there for about a year or so, and tried to paint and draw pictures and paint and everything. Just pretty hard to make a living, you know. In Santa Fe, there was like only one gallery that handled Western art, and at one time only one in Taos.
Was this still kind of like early '60s?
Yeah, and it was before a whole bunch of stuff, you know, and that it really caught the Western thing really got rolling, you know. And so anyway, we just moved over to Knoxon, and there was a mill there right by the bridge going over to the store, and I got a job. Jack Kay and I got a job working on the green chain, and then I found out what real work was really like. You know,
tell me about that. What's that? I don't even know.
That's the boards come off the sawed and they're green, and so 2x4s 10 feet come off, and right behind it is a 2x4 that's 8 feet, and then right behind that there's a 1x8 that's 12 feet, and you got to pull them off and stack them on a stack.
Super dangerous too.
And it was just like they just kept coming. If you didn't get it off, it'd fall on go on the end. You know, it's like on a television deal with the pies coming out of a deal.
Lucy Ricardo.
Right, and but anyway, eventually the equipment all broke down, and when you'd hear it break down, you'd go. And but at the store, unmarked cars. About every 2 months would come in, two guys would come in and talk to the people that run the store to make sure I was still there.
And was that the Northrop guys that were checking up on you?
Federal.
Yeah, just because you had a top secret.
Yeah. They wanted to make sure that I didn't, Xerox a whole bunch of stuff or microfilm stuff that we were working on and haul it off and sell it to somebody.
Probably saw you doing the boards and figured, he's probably not.
Well, they figured it was crazy to start with, Yeah. I mean, why would you do that to start with? That didn't make sense to anybody that had a job, Yeah. So art never has, But anyway, I went over to Kalispell, Montana, which was right by Knox in there. I heard there was a gun show over there.
And what year would have this been?
And it'd be, I bet you 59 in there. And 60.
Yeah. And you're
61 maybe.
You're kind of mid-late 20s?
Yeah. And I see all these antique guns everywhere. It's great, you know. And I just thought, well, why don't I paint some little paintings of cabins in the snow with horses or Western stuff, you know, and go over and see if I can sell them at this show. And all I got to do is rent a table for $200, you know, for the weekend. So I did that, and I would take my paintings over, and I would take and say a guy had a 94 Winchester rifle laying on a table, and he wanted $150 for it. So I'd go over and I'd say, how much do you want for that gun? He said, $150. That's a nice 94 Winchester, you know, 30-30.
Did you know stuff about guns at that point or not?
Barely. And, any old gun looked good to me then, see. Yeah. I got a little choosier later on, but
I'm sure you did.
But anyway, I'd say, well, would you trade that gun for that painting right there that I got over in that little easel over there, little cabin painting, you know? He'd say, you mean you'd trade that hand-done, hand-painted painting with that beautiful carved frame on it for this gun? I said, yeah. He said, well, I've never taken my wife anything home from a gun show. You got a deal. So I went and got this painting with an $8 Mexican frame on it, gave it to him and picked up the gun. Then I'd walk clear across the gun show, maybe 400 tables.
Far away as you could get from that
way
guy.
Over there. And I'd go up to this other guy that had Winchesters.
Yeah.
And I'd say, what would you give me for this gun? And he says, I saw it on that guy's table over there. He wanted, you know, $150 for it. That's way too much, you know. I said, well, what would you give for it? He said, well, I'd give $100 for it. I said, you got a deal. So I just sold my painting for $100. So.
Yep.
And so.
Did you know you had that ability, that buying and selling and trading?
No.
That is a gift.
No, it was survival of the fittest.
Yeah.
I mean, God. And so I'd take and then once in a while I'd trade for something and keep it. Like I'd trade for a 76 Winchester, and I'd go home. I'd go, well,
you start researching stuff and figuring out what it was.
So I'd go buy the Matus book on Winchesters, and start to read that, and then I'd buy the Servan book on Colts, and start to read that, and so then I'd start to know what to trade for, you know. And sometimes I'd take one home and kind of clean it up a little bit. It is like an attic found or something, you know, and make it look a lot better. And so I started to kind of deal in guns and paintings both. And so that really worked out really well in Kalispell. And then we bought this little house at Woods Bay, a 2-story log house at Woods Bay for $16,000. And the telephone was like only 4 numbers. But would take and Dr. Nelson, who was just starting a practice in Kalispell, and he was just starting to practice, and he just loved art, and he really, I don't know if he got it from his folks or who it from, but he really put together some great stuff, you know, some Russells. Yes. Yeah. And great guy, and we got to know each other really well. And he had come down to Woods Bay and buy a painting or two or something that really just was wonderful. And then there was a guy by the name of O'Neill Jones that had a gallery in Big Fork, and he was friends too. And then there was Paul Mesa. They were referred to as the Kalispell Mafia, all dealing in art, all. And so that really helped me out a whole bunch, you know. I mean,
they would buy your paintings.
Yeah, I could paint stuff, and they were buying it. See, Charlie Russell plowed some fertile ground in the state of Montana.
Yes.
Everybody that lived there thought that, my goodness, they got to get a painting or something of a sculpture of a Montana artist because it's going to be worth a whole bunch of money someday. See.
Right.
And so anyway, that worked out really well. And then they were just starting. That I heard that they'd started the Cowboy Artist of America.
And that was 65 they started it?
Yeah. Now, I was still roping steers all that time. I had a horse and kept him at Flathead Lake Lodge, a dude ranch about 4 miles north of
And
where
you
we
were
lived.
roping for like rodeos and stuff like that? Yeah.
Yeah, team roping and rodeos and always doing that and interested in the West from that standpoint. And so anyway, it just worked out. I applied to be a member of the Cowboy Artists of America.
This was 69?
And they were at the hall in Oklahoma City then. They had just kind of started, having the shows there. I think they only had 2 shows before I think I was in the 3rd one. And anyway, they had me send my work to the hall. And of course, it was down in the basement. And at that time, all the members would go down and look at the artwork and see where they wanted that person in the Cowboy Artist or not,
Yeah. How many guys were there at that time?
Maybe 15, 16, right in there. And so anyway, when it came and then I flew there. I flew to Oklahoma City the weekend that they were going to pick a new member. And of course, they didn't announce it till a month later, but it was a great show. And my granddad came down from Ponca City, and it was great to see him again and everything.
And was your painting or paintings in that show?
Mm-hmm.
They did.
Yeah.
But you didn't know if you were a member yet.
No. And so went to the airport in Oklahoma City and got on the plane. Frontier Airlines, I think, was flying in. Got on the airplane to fly back to Kalispell. And one of the members was, he was a member of the Cowboy Artist. Had a wooden leg. God, I can't think of his name right now. I'll think of it later. But anyway, he was getting on the airplane with his son. And so I thought, well, he had to know who the new members were.
Yeah.
And it'd kill you, It's like waiting for the doctor after you had a blood test or something, and they'll call you for 3 or 4 days, You don't know if you got something or not. But anyway, so I took and I managed to sit next to him. And so we started talking a little bit and everything, and I says, by the way, I said, did you guys take any new members in this year? He says, when we got ready to look at the artwork and everything, they were going to bring it up and put it in a room. He said, my leg fell off, and he says, I couldn't get it back on, so a couple of the guys at the Cowboy Hall of Fame who were maintenance men come up and got me and carried me downstairs and put me on the table and got by the vise and got it fixed up to where I could get my leg back on. And when I got back up there, it had already been decided. So he says, I never knew who was voted in or not. So I go back to Woods Bay and just get back to my little studio painting and everything. And the telephone rang about 2 days later, and it was Ned Jacob. And he says, congratulations, they voted you in as a member. He says, I know they don't tell anybody till later, but he said, you've been a friend of mine for a long time. So he says, I thought I'd call you and tell you.
Did you know that was going to be a turning point in your life at that point?
No, because it wasn't so much, they just started showing the art there at the hall. And so the Cowboy Artists of America wasn't it started as a group of artists, some guys getting together around a campfire on a ranch somewhere, and just visiting and talking about things that they could talk about. If you had a cowboy artist got with a bunch of plumbers, you wouldn't know what to say. Mm-hmm. But if like-minded people, Joe Beeler used to say, and I think it was true, that every cowboy wants to be an artist and every artist wants to be a cowboy.
Yeah.
So
that's probably true, actually.
Yeah, and so we all, Joe and he roped and the different and Phippen did before he died, and everything. So it all started basically as a camp out, getting together on a ranch, some ranch somewhere, and see how they work cattle and camp out and the whole works. Had nothing to do with selling art at that time.
Yeah, but they knew cowboying. Those guys.
Yes, that was the whole idea of how it started. You know, a lot of members ended up being cowboy artists that never owned a horse in their life. But the West is more of a thing of the heart than it is probably the actual doing it. I don't think you have to be a cowboy and rope steers or something like that to be some sort of an artist. You know,
No.
Now, Howard Post did. He roped and Joe Beeler roped all the time. We roped together a lot of places. Bill Owen was a good cowboy and roped and punched cows on some big ranches, and Bill Neberker. We roped together at several jackpot team ropings and stuff, and so there's a few of them, but they're all cowboy at the heart.
Yeah, and they like to, and they learn and look and see.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that's the critical component to me, is if you capture what really is going on, that you're not, you've got to have at least been around that environment to understand not only just the imagery, but I think just the language as well.
Well, like for instance, nobody painted probably the fur trade and the Indians at that time than Clymer, and he was a great student of it, really. And nobody's has painted the North American Plains Indians better than Turpning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he deserves every accolade that he's ever got, because he's not only just a great designer and a great artist, but but the Indians themselves like him, So, and I think if you've got cowboys that like your work, they see something in it that's right, and they can readily see something that's wrong.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm sure they have no problems telling you either if you did it wrong. That you need to go back to see what's really going on. You got that cinch wrong, and you've got the horse is not correct.
Well, there was a painting that the Mountain Oyster Club here bought one year for their permanent collection. It's an Indian coming down with a lance crossing a stream, and he's got a chrome hackamore on the horse's head. It wasn't invented until 1959 or something like that. So, but and then a lot of a lot of artists paint early mountain men and trappers with these multicolored blankets on. The Hudson Bay type blanket that's got red, blue, and yellow stripe on it, and they're a Glacier Park blanket. They didn't come out till 1880s.
Yeah, no, they should be white and brown or white.
That's
and
right, absolutely.
That's what it was. Now, are you the oldest of the Cowboy Artists of America at this point?
That's a standing member now.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been in longer than anybody else.
How many years have you been in there?
I got in right at 50 years now.
Wow.
Gordon Snido's still alive, but he is not a member.
Yeah.
He lives in Ruidosa. So next after me would probably be Bill Neberker and Gary Niblett, right in there.
Now
everybody else is dead.
Yeah. Well, you're going to outlive everybody.
I feel it some mornings, but
but you've won You're one of the few that's won gold medals in both sculpture and paintings and Best of Show, right?
Yeah.
That's a real rarefied air, correct?
Well, the medal that I really like is the medal where all the membership votes on the artist that has the best overall show.
Yeah.
And that's the one that Howard Turpning always said that meant the most to him, And so the rest, everything else is like three judges walking around, and they decide and add it all up and see who gets what. But to me, the medals haven't been that important. Back when we first started the show in Phoenix, everybody was trying to win a medal. So Fritz White and everybody, this Beeler and everybody that did sculptures did great big ones, and trying to see who could win a medal. And I decided, geez, I don't know. I think I could use the money more than anything. So I did a small pack horse piece that's maybe a foot tall or something like that, and Kalispell Art Casting up in Kalispell cast it at a real decent price. I think they cast it for $600 or $700. And I put $6,500 on it in the show, and there was an edition of 35, and sold every one of them that night. And all the members said they started to add up 6,500 times 35. That's why maybe you can add it up real quick.
It's a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah, and so next year, everybody was doing smaller pieces and everything, and but they were pieces that people could afford and take home and use. And can't everybody use something that's 8 feet tall in their yard, you know?
People can.
Yeah.
And so how have you seen that change? You've been in it 50 years.
Yeah.
What's the biggest change you'd say from that point when you guys were a small group of real cowboys to now?
The membership has been about 25 to 26 people, guys, ever since. For years, the Phoenix Art Museum, when they had the Cowboy Artist of America banquet, it was black. Everybody wore tuxedos. The spotlight was on the awards ceremony. It was like like Hollywood.
It was like the Oscars for.
Yeah, and it was really something. And I know one year I got Slim Pickens to come to be on the deal, and Linda Gray, who was in the Dallas series, married to JR. She came. I was a president that year, and up at the banquet was sitting Barry Goldwater and next to Slim Pickens, and Thelma Kekeffer next to Linda Gray, and it was Williams. I think it was Williams was the governor of the state of Arizona at that time. He was there. His wife was sitting at my table, and it was a special deal. It was really something, and of course, I think Southwest Art was just starting. Artists of the Rockies was just kind of getting rolling, you know. And I've been to 2 or 3 of the shows there where they were complete sellouts at the Phoenix Art Museum. Every piece of art sold, and multiple bronzes. And it was just great deal. And it went along for a long time, and still we moved the show from Phoenix to the Cowboy Hall of Fame, back where we first started, and they always wanted us to come back, and so we moved back there, and it's been going great back there. But it's not the same as it was. You know, if you remember back, there was a time there was probably 14 westerns on television. You know, Rifleman and Wagon Train and all kinds of them. They all ended up kind of with Dallas being a modern kind of a Western deal, and that was about the end of the urban cowboy thing. There was you couldn't go to the Denver airport and say to somebody that's wanting to meet you there, say, I'd have a hat on, I'd have a black hat and some boots. And everybody there had hats and boots on during that period.
Now. It's different for sure in Denver now.
It's different now. You walk in, and I was the only one walking through all of Denver Airport with a cowboy hat on just recently.
I'm the one without the beard.
Yeah. There's a gentleman that built a wing onto the Cowboy Hall of Fame, Bill Atkinson, oil man from Tulsa, and he's in his 90s. And he called me up a couple of years ago and ordered buck and horse bronze for one of his sons for Christmas. He had 2 sons that was in the oil business with him that didn't want to be in the oil business. And we got to talking a little bit, and I want to know where he wanted this bronze shipped to, and it was a dude ranch in Colorado. And I said, well, tell me about your son. And he said, well, my boys didn't want anything to do with the oil business. He said, when they were little kids, he said, my wife and I took them to this dude ranch every summer, and they could not wait to go next summer up to the dude ranch. Mm-hmm. And they went there. He said, I took them there, and they learned to ride horses. They learned to do kind of gymkhana, barrel racing, and things like that. And they grew up there. And they married and had families. And they took their kids there. So we all were there. And eventually got to the point by where only the people that were at the Dude Ranch were people that were there last year. There was not room for any new people to come to it. It was so popular.
Yeah.
And he said the people that owned the Dude Ranch were ready to retire, and they wanted to sell it. So he says, I'll just buy the Dude Ranch and let my oldest son live there and run it. That's what he wants. So that's where he was living and running it. And it got to be full. And there was another Dude Ranch that was for sale. So he bought that for his other son. And the overflow from one could go to the other one and vice versa. And it was great. They had the same kind of stuff. Had a great bar set up.
Yeah.
Everything was great. Kids had to eat separate. Kids could not eat with their folks. Everything was great. Had rides for folks and the rides for the kids. Everything was separated when you got there, kind of. And so anyway, he said that was up till about 5 years ago. And he says about 4 or 5 years ago, he said, my kids, my boys have noticed that the kids that come with their families to the deal kind of go off with their cell phones and they're texting other people, their other friends and kids. They don't want to sit around the campfire and sing cowboy songs or roast hot dogs. They think it's corny. And he said that they're not interested in riding horses, very few of them. And they really are then it's like, when are we going home? And he said it's a totally different thing than when.
Different vibe. You think that's the future of Western art in the West?
I think it's changed a lot. I don't think the guy down at the service station can necessarily put enough stuff together to buy a turpning or a nice piece of artwork or something. But I think as long as there's places like Vail, Aspen, Santa Fe, Jackson Hole, Whitefish, Montana, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, places like that.
Missed one.
Where?
You're sitting
Oh, yeah, Tucson, Arizona. Yeah, but Tucson and Scottsdale, it's a given, kind of, you know. But as long as the point I was going to make is that when somebody retires from back east and they bought this beautiful lot overlooking the valley in Vail or Jackson Hole, and they build a beautiful big log and rock home, first thing they do to get to town is they buy a good hat, maybe one that's even been worn before, and a Levi jacket and kind of fit in because we want to be part of the people that live there and love the West and everything. Mm-hmm. They're not going to necessarily hang Hawaiian landscapes in their new big log home in the West. Right. They're going to want Western paintings, landscapes, wildlife, and sculpture. And that's, I think that's still there.
Yeah,
I mean,
I agree. Actually, I don't see that changing.
And there's an age, there's a certain age where people still, if they finally get to a point by where they can afford to buy some stuff, and they retired, they're a certain age though where now they're going to buy that Mustang. That they could never, Mustang coupe, where they could never get it when they was a kid in school, and fix it up and drive it around. Mm-hmm. And that's where all the muscle cars and Jackson Barrett and all the Krause auction sales are going to. You look and see the guys in the audience that's buying those cars, and they're obviously retired and
50s, 70s.
Yes, right, yeah. And that's so I think that's kind of where it's at, but it's solid. There's artists that I know that lived in Big Fork when I first moved there that I didn't even know if they're still alive and they are or what they're doing. Now, an artist that's got staying power and stays in there. You know, Joe Beeler said one time, and it's been a truth with the same with me, that he said if he couldn't sell any paintings or anything, he'd still paint if he was driving a truck. Mm-hmm. And I'd still be painting if I was making saddles somewhere.
Or sculpting.
Or, you know.
Which do you consider yourself, by the way, or do you? A sculptor, a painter?
Started out painting first, really, and then later on, there's a I found out you could do the same thing and look at it from different directions, you know, which is kind of interesting. And of course, Russell did it, and so did Remington. And falling along it's not a rare deal, I don't think. And well, it's not common, but it's not rare because Beeler did it, and Bill Owen did it, and very well, I might say. And so Howard hasn't, but he didn't need to.
Yeah, well, Post has done a couple, but Turpning hasn't, and I don't think Dixon ever made a sculpture in his life either. But so I didn't get the answer though. Which are you, a painter or a sculptor or both? Or you can't.
I think painting's harder. To me, it's harder, and I always say that doing sculpture's like stacking wood. That doesn't make my wife happy. It's of course she does monuments and
we're talking about your very famous wife.
That's right. Yeah,
sculptor who's going to be
she's as good a sculptor that there is going right now too, and so no, it's just different. It's like comparing apples and oranges and everything. It's just a totally different mindset, you know. It's like saying, what you'd rather do, paint pictures or tie flies or something like that. It's different, you know. But sculpture is, you know, she's got that, you know, gold water in the rotunda in the United States Capitol, and I know a lot of artists in the United States that give up painting just to have that, have one of those there, you know.
Well, you have a major, and I was just want to talk about it because we have just a few minutes left, but the Hawaiian big sculpture over on the Big Eye at Waimea, which we go over there quite a bit, and it always amazes me. I walk in, you know, to the shopping mall, and I see a huge Fred fellow. So how did that happen, and what's the connection there?
Well, I spent time on the Parker Ranch on the Big Island of Hawaii working cattle with the cowboys.
And when was that?
That was back. I was in the members of Cowboy Artists of America. Deborah and I. Every year would go rent a house at Puako and go over there and spend a month and take Fabi with us. And then we'd go up and work on the ranches and in the afternoon, in the mornings, and then in the afternoon go down and snorkel and spend time at the ocean. And a friend of mine who I met a long time ago, and we got to be very good friends, was Bill White. And Bill White served 2 tours of duty as a Navy SEAL, and decided he wanted to live in Hawaii. His family was goes way back into part of it. His mother married James Irvine, and so James Irvine was his stepdad.
Got it.
If you can imagine James Irvine that owned all of Newport Beach and Laguna Beach and half Orange County at one time. Anyway, he grew up there surfing, and when he went into the Navy, it was natural for him to go into Navy SEALs. You know, they say if you don't mind dark or cold water, will come on. Yeah. And anyway, but he also loved art, and he started a gallery in Laguna Beach called Blanco Art Gallery. Just wasn't there but a year, I think. And he came to the Cowboy Artist Show and said to me one time, he said, "You've got to come over to Hawaii. You won't believe the cowboys on Hawaii."
Yeah, there's some great cowboys there.
And so eventually did go over there. And his boys were just starting to really rope in. He roped too, and he had a great arena. And 2 guys, Kenny Miranda and Zanga Schutte, ran his roping arena there, and were the top cowboys on the island, rodeo cowboys. The top cowboys working cattle and stuff were for the Parker Ranch and Puwawa and Kukaya and different ranches that's around the islands. There's a lot of them. A lot of people don't realize it, but the island just covered with the ranches.
Yeah, we're talking the Big Island.
Big Island. And also Kauai and Molokai and Lanai has one also, big ranch. So anyway, so I went over there and we spent some time there, and I got to know all the cowboys on the islands. And I roped, we worked cattle up on the Parker Ranch and up on Puawa and roped at the different rodeos. The USTRC, it's a United States team roping deal that's nationwide. and put on big team ropings everywhere. Bill White Arena, Halikea, was the arena that they used for their finals for the Hawaiian Islands. And so Deborah and I both roped in all the team roping finals up the island. Of course, we got to know everybody on the islands.
Yeah, small.
And got to know them really well. When it come time that they wanted to do this monument, getting back to your question, they put it out to several people, not just me.
Yeah.
So the little model that I did, everybody was to kind of do a little model. I had the Hawaiian saddles and the whole works on it, right? Not just a rope and saddle like you'd use now. And of course, the part of the board was the cowboys that decided on the ranch and everything what to put up there, And so they picked me to do it, and it was a big job. It's like 40 feet long and 20 foot tall.
Huge sculpture. It's right in the middle of Waimea. You can't miss it. It's funny because we go there all the time, and I just feel like I'm at home every time I'm getting a Starbucks at Waimea. It's like there's Fred. And people like it too. I've talked to people around there, and they, we love that sculpture. That's that's considered to be part of their heritage, I think now.
I think it's only the second sculpture that was on the island. The first one was down in front of Hawaii. It was on King Kamehameha.
I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's always got lays around its neck.
It does always have lays. And you got to watch the coconuts because there's some really high coconut trees right there and they'll bunk you on the head.
And the other one is in front of the Bishop Museum on Oahu. They cast that to go in front of, I think, the Bishop Museum to start with. And it was on a ship that went down.
Sunk. Yeah, that's right.
Sunk. And
France, I think, is where it
and they cast another one. I think that might be the one in front of the Bishop Museum. And when they salvaged the other one, brought it up and brought it down to Hawaii because that's where he was born. King Kamehameha was born at Hawaii.
I've been to his birthplace right there by that big heiau.
Yeah.
That unbelievable heiau, which is, again, a place you got to go and see if you haven't.
I know it.
It's unreal, actually.
Well, the time that we spent up on the Parker Ranch, the last big gather, and all the cowboys and everybody from the Parker Ranch had a luau for Deborah and I, and all horseback. And so we got a picture of all of us lined up on Mauna Kea.
Oh, you got to get me a copy.
It's a great. All the cowboys.
You got to get me a copy.
All the cowboys are there. Sonny Kikilani, and a lot of the cowboys. Sonny Kikilani is a national treasure right now for the islands up there. Freddie Rice just died, and he ran cows on Kauai, and a fishing boat out of Kona, and but there's a. I met one of the cowboys on the ranch that I roped with a whole bunch was named Clayton Bertelman. That does not sound like Hawaiian, does it? Yeah. But he was pure Hawaiian, just. And it was his brother who, with a group, built a hokulea, the voyaging canoe that went to Tahiti. And he went on one of the trips on the hokulea to Tahiti. But anyway, we were roping one night at Halikea and team roping, and after the roping was over, everybody would kind of gather around. The trucks were parked with the trailers and everything, and play ukuleles and sing a little bit and talk story about stuff. And he was sitting right next to me, and they would have like poo-poos, and which is hors d'oeuvres.
Yep.
And then pee-pee is cattle. You could have pee-pee poo-poos. And anyway, we're sitting around talking everything, and Clayton Bertelman is right there. Wore a big black hat, great big thing. Good cowboy. Died, had a heart attack and died. I said to Clayton, if you were going to be executed tomorrow, you were in prison and you were going to die, what would be the last meal that you would order? And he, a lot of Hawaiians are very superstitious. And he looked at me like a bolt of lightning hit him, like I knew something he didn't know. And he just looked at me, and his eyes got great big. And I went on to another subject, and so about an hour later, he said, "Freddie, I finally figured out what it was I want to eat, you know." Like he was going to order it, you know, like I was going to order it for him or something. I said, "What's that?" He says, "I want a great big, thick steak." And he says, "I want to pound sea salt into it and just throw it right on the coals on Kiavi."
Yeah.
Kiavi is mesquite
Yeah.
on the islands. Kiavi is mesquite on the coals. And he says, "I want a case of Budweiser." And he said, "I want a pot of poi." And he said, that's it. That's what he wanted.
Yeah.
He was raised with poi and meat and Budweiser. So
Yeah. And Spam probably too.
oh yeah, gosh, spam sandwich, you bet.
Yeah, I'll take that over the poi. The only poi I can handle is the stuff that actually has some flavoring to it.
Yeah, they have a pink, kind of a purple one from Tahiti that's sweet.
Yeah,
It's pretty good. It's not bad.
The other stuff is kind of tastes like paste to my palate.
Yeah.
But it's Hawaiiana. If you don't go and try the poi, you're not really getting the whole feel of Hawaii, in my opinion.
That's right.
Fred?
Yeah.
We've already done over an hour.
No.
Yeah, way over.
Oh, geez. I had some stories to tell you,
Tell me one last story. We got time. Is there anything you want to share? The one last thing?
Let me see. Charlie Kimura was running the Parker Ranch, and we were over there, and we were open at the arena that night. He didn't rope, but he come down to watch. And he says, "Freddie," he says, "you want to go with me tomorrow to North Kohala?" He said, I pulled all the cowboys from the Parker Ranch from everywhere, 250,000 acres. I pulled them all here. Old Japanese guy that ran all the cattle on the North Kohala division of the Parker Ranch was retiring, and Sonny Kikilani was going to take it over. But he said we had to know every year there was a right amount of cattle to come in, and we shipped out of there, and everything looked great and everything. But he says, we know that a lot of cattle got back because of, the mountains, you've been over them, on both roads, upper road and the bottom road.
Get in that high stuff, it's impossible to get them out.
And so, anyway, he says, I'll stop by and get us a lunch tomorrow and pick you up, and we'll drive out there. I says, okay, let's go. So I met him out there, and he had the lunches and everything.
You're going for strays.
Yeah, and so we went down through Kauai High, went through that lower road. We're going on the lower road. And when we were within probably 2 miles of the pens along the ocean, the big pastures all along the ocean, you could hear the cattle bawling. And he gave all the cowboys orders. Nothing goes back. If you got to rope it and drag it into a truck, get it down there. He says, I don't want anything up in those mountains. I want to know what's going on. So we pulled up to pretty close, and Sonny Kikilani come riding up on his horse. And all you could see was cattle, almost all the way down to Hawaii.
Wow.
And Charlie said to Sonny, what's the count that you got right now, as close as you can get? He says, ballpark's fine. I know it is impossible to count them all right now. But he said, it looks like we have right around 10,000 head. Absolutely incredible.
And some of those had to be wild.
Some of them were bigger than horses. They had big horns on them. Some bulls were wild. And I mean, it was really something. And I asked Charlie, I said, what in God's name are you going to do with this many cows, where you go? What's going to happen to them?
Yeah.
He says, looks like we're going to have to ship a lot of them to Oahu, to the yards over there, and see if we could sell them on the local market. And because a lot of them are,
Oh yeah.
Anyway, I don't know what they ever did with them all and everything, but
they've been working on trying to clean all those out because they destroyed the land up in there.
Oh, they did. And they'd chase you if you was up there. Now I know they are just about got them. I think they probably did get them all cleaned out, but there's still a lot of cattle up there. That's still a big division. Sonny doesn't run that anymore. I forget who runs it now. But anyway, that was one of the deals from the Cowboy Artists of America had a trail ride over there, And so Joe Beeler and Bill Neberker, Bill Owen didn't go, and I think we got Gordon Snyder was in then, and he might have been on a horse with his. He always on a horse with his camera, you know.
Yeah.
And we were there just to work, help the cowboys, and we gathered about 700 head of Angus cows up on Mauna Kea, and we're going to take them down to the headquarters. Down, you know where the fairgrounds are, right outside of town there, and we were going to take them down there and push them all in down there, and so we got them all gathered up on the mountain up there, and I was next to Bill Neberker, and Sonny Kealani was over there, and a couple of the other cowboys. They said, "Now, don't get in front of these cows when we start down the mountain because they know where they're going." And we got to push them down there, but just don't get in front of them or get in amongst them. You know, just stay on the outside because they know where they're going.
Yeah.
And there's a gate down there that's maybe 16 feet across. You know, the rest barbed wire fence. And we started behind those cattle, and Bill Neberker still talks about it this day. They started down; those cows started down that mountain. All those black Angus big cows started down that mountain on a run. Pretty soon it started as a trot. Pretty soon it was a lope. Pretty soon it was a dead run, and it was everything we could do to stay up with them on our horses. And they went through the fence. Okay, they took all the fence out all the way down there, right through it, everything into that big pasture and everything.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
That's something to see.
And it was wild and
Coming
everything.
off Mauna Kea, no less.
Wild deal. And I said to Sonny, I said, "My God," he said, "look at all the fence they took out." He said, "They do it every year." So anyway, he said the fence crew's got something to do tomorrow. So anyway, that's just one of the other things, you know.
Well, you've taken out a lot of fences over the years, I'm sure.
Yep.
And it's so great to have you, Fred. You've been my artist for, I don't know, 15 years.
Yep.
I just love getting your art. I love your paintings, your sculpture, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to get to spend a little time with you and learn a little more about Fred Fellows.
Okay, my friend.
All right. Fred Fellows, Art Dealer Diaries. Not one to miss. Thanks, Fred.
Shake hands again.
All right.
Now, and like that, and like that. I went over, when the first time I got over to Hawaii, one of the cowboys, when we were roping steers that night, and we pulled in, and I hadn't met anybody, so I go up to, like, Sonny Kealani and say, "Hey, notice you guys shake hands funny over here." I said, how's that? And he said, "Well, you go like this, and then you go like that, and then you go like that." And I says, "Okay, let me get this straight. Like this, like that, and like that." I got it now. So I go back 2 years later, and I go, "Hey, Sonny, how you doing?"
Right.
And he goes, "Like that, like that, and like that." I said, "Last time I was here, you said it's like that, and like that, and like that." And I said, "Now you've changed it." I said, "What's going on?" He looked around a little bit, and he says, "Every now and then we change the combination."
Fred Fellows. And on that, the secret handshake.
If you're Howley, they change the handshake.
Thank you again, Fred.
My pleasure.
Very good. Man Gallery, located for over 26 years in Tucson, Arizona, specializing in antique Native American art, early Western art, including the famed Maynard Dixon, as well as modern art. You can find everything online at medicinemangallery.com. There's over 6,000 objects to select from. Also, the Charles Bloom Murder Mystery Series, written by yours truly, me, Mark Sublette. There's 6 books in this series, and they follow the protagonist Charles Bloom through all the intrigue of the art world set in Santa Fe and the Navajo Nation. These can be found on Audible, eBooks, Amazon, and of course, the gallery at medicinemangallery.com.